Cell phone?
Yes.
Cell phone charger?
Yes.
Credit card?
The charger.
Driver's license. Those are the basics we need. Have a good time.
Thanks. You have fun too.
Mm.
And whatever you could do to maybe like vacuum the house, that would be great.
I will vacuum the house while you're gone.
And your gutters.
I'm going to finish the gutters.
That's awesome.
That's it. I'll be good. Have a good trip.
Thanks. I hope it'll be good. Joyce seemed kind of nervous when I talked to her on the phone yesterday.
Trip anxiety. I get that too.
Get cash. Yeah, I'm good to go. Be good, Dimitri. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye.
I'll let you know when we get there.
Okay. Hey guys, Miriam is going out of town for 4 days with her girlfriend to visit her sister in the western part of North Carolina. I will be left alone and unsupervised for 4 days. Got most of our chores done, so I guess I can finish this. We're gonna take the Spyder out for a run, get some video. Got two objectives for today's ride. Number one is we're going to take a lap around the Great Dismal Swamp. That sounds easy, but the Dismal Swamp is a big swamp, which we'll talk about in a moment. Second, I want to get some time to shooting the new Cyclops Gear action cam. And right now I'm talking to you on the Prism, but I'm using the GoPro, which is mounted right here. And on the other side, I have the Cyclops Gear, which I'll be testing today and doing side-by-side comparison. That's going to be a separate video. It's in the works. So that's our plan, and let's go have some fun. The nice young lady who was on television said there was less than a 5% chance of precipitation today. It's going to be an absolutely gorgeous day. This morning I got up and cross-checked the weather again. Same thing. So, of course it's going to rain. We're on the Spyder. And by the way, I think I've made this offer before. If you were in agriculture and you were in part of the country that is experiencing a drought, give us a call. We'll take the Spyder out to visit you and hook you up with some rain. And here we're crossing the Intercoastal Waterway. And picking up US Route 17 South. A little bit of trivia for you travel buffs. US Route 17 is part of the National Highways Network, which was developed back in the 30s, well before the idea of Interstate 95 was even considered. It starts in a little town called Winchester, Virginia, and travels south to Punta Gorda, Florida. Ah, what a gorgeous day for a ride. You know, it's times like this, get out on the 4-lane, nice, easy cruising, got the cruise control on. One of the benefits about cruise control is I can rest my throttle hand. You know, if you're gripping that thing for hour after hour after hour, that can be a little tiresome, but I get to switch off when we're on the highway. So about this Dismal Swamp that we're taking a lap around, it's a pretty big swamp. I think it's close to 2/3 the size of the city of Virginia Beach, which is 400 square miles. So I think it's about 300 square mile swamp. It starts in Virginia and goes into North Carolina. It's large. It's very large. It is, well, as the name suggests, it's dismal. A lot of military bases in the area. Naval aviation is big in this region. And right after World War II, in the 40s, a propeller-driven military aircraft crashed into the Dismal Swamp The pilot safely ejected and survived with no injuries, but he actually watched the airplane go into the swamp, and to this day they have not found it. It's incredibly dense. A few miles from here is the wreckage of a B-17 bomber that is cannot be seen from the air because it's just been overtaken by the swamp. And I've not been able to find the actual coordinates, or I'd like to truck through the swamp and see if I can find it myself. It's been picked over pretty good from the scavengers. Now they've got every type of wildlife you can imagine in Dismal Swamp. There's even been alligators sighted in the lower edges of the swamp. Lots of bear. And on 2 occasions in recent history, the bears have left the swamp and ventured into Virginia Beach. One was in a residential subdivision, pretty densely populated, away from any wilderness. And the most famous was one that went to the oceanfront on Atlantic Avenue. Witnesses reported a bear on Atlantic Avenue. Animal Control and the police showed up, and they had to tranquilize the bear and relocating back to the Dismal Swamp. It was a media circus. But imagine you're on vacation in one of the largest resort cities on the East Coast, and walking down the street is a bear. All right, coming into North Carolina. I think we're here. Now just off to my right and behind me, just on the other side of US 17 in the swamp area, is a large farm area. If you go to Google Earth and you zoom in to the western side of 17, just north, I think it's north of the North Carolina line. If you look close, you will see the outline of military runways. Military runways from the 1940s had a triangular shape, and that was a auxiliary military field that has since been, dismantled, taken up, and since the ditches were already in place for drainage, the farmers kept the ditch lines, and you can still see the outlines of the runway from Google Earth. So the waterway that was off to our right as we were leaving the rest stop is still right over there. It is part of the Intercoastal Waterway Network. I'm not really sure how far north it goes. I know it goes to the top of the Chesapeake Bay, which is a couple hundred miles away, and continues on south. And a little bit of history there. George Washington actually was part of the surveying crew. He was a young man that surveyed this. This was how goods and services were moved up and down the eastern seaboard in the era before railroads. Today it's used predominantly by leisure craft, some commerce, but not a whole lot. It's just cheaper to use train than put them on a barge and move up and down, although they still do quite a bit of bulk transport that way. It did see a resurgence during World War II because of the Battle of the Atlantic, when German U-boats would set off the coast of Virginia and North Carolina and all the way down towards Florida. It would sink commerce ships to disrupt the war effort. So they couldn't get into the intercoastal waterway, too shallow, and they're liable to get caught. So that was it was used quite a bit back then. A little bit of history. Although there is no recorded sinking of German U-boats along the Virginia Beach coast, there were along the North Carolina coast around Hatteras. So off to my left, a few miles, is the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And during World War II, German U-boats would surface, find merchant ship, torpedo them, and sink them. And more than once, the fires from burning cargo ships were visible from the beaches of Hatteras. Matter of fact, if you go to Google and look for Graveyard of the Atlantic, it has documented all the ship sinkings, to include some German submarines that were sunk. And believe it or not, they were sunk by a couple of them were sunk by civilians. Civilians formed an organization called the Civil Air Patrol. Their first job was to go out and patrol, and if they found German U-boats, they'd call the Navy. The Navy would come in. Navy is a little bit slow sometimes, kind of spread kind of thin, if you can imagine. So the civilians figured out a way to strap bombs to their own airplanes, the civilian airplanes, and they had 2 confirmed kills in North Carolina where they sunk German U-boats using civilian airplanes of the era with bombs strapped to the wings. Americans tend to be a scrappy bunch, don't we? Before leaving home, I consulted Google Maps and found a little barbecue joint at the intersection of 158 and US 13. I have a thing for barbecue, so I thought I would check it out. Tarheel Barbeque. Small mom and pop place, off the beaten path. Let's see how it stacks up. Here, I thought, well, this isn't going to be very good. It was just basically cooked pork. So I looked around for some sauce to put on it to give it some flavor, some added dimension, and they had some homemade sauce. And oh my gosh, some of the best vinegar-based barbecue sauce I have sunk my teeth into in a while. It was so good, I actually bought a bottle, and they actually make it here. They take whole ketchup bottles and they put their vinegar-based barbecue sauce in it. So yeah, really good. And your sides are limited to what they have today. I had collard greens, which were seasoned perfectly, and boiled potatoes, which were swimming in butter. Yeah, buddy. After lunch, we head north on US Route 13. If that sounds familiar, we've been on 13 several times before. US 13 takes us across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel to the eastern shore of Virginia, up to the winery and to Cape Charles, which we've done several videos on. Actually, US 13 goes all the way to Philadelphia, which is its northern endpoint, and to the south all the way to Fayetteville, North Carolina. But for our purposes today, it happens to run along the westernmost boundary of the Great Dismal Swamp, which takes us back up towards US 58, back into Virginia Beach. This is where we turned off of Interstate 64 on the 17 south. So our giant loop is complete, and a little bit of traffic here. I don't know if it's an accident or people stacked up in line trying to get to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. There's only one real road that goes down there, and we're coming up to the on-ramp for that road. Well, guys, that's not bad. Took us about almost 5 hours to run around the swamp. And lunch on the way. Not a bad day. I just have to convince Miriam that I worked all day and wasn't playing around any. Wonder if she'll buy it.
If you like this video, give it a thumbs up.
If you don't like it, give it a thumbs down.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Feel free to leave a comment below.